The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
So Eric in Lincolnshire, Illinois, as a matter of fact, says, is the sacrifice, this is a question regarding the sacrifice of the Mass. Is the sacrifice that happens at each Mass distinct from Calvary and any other Mass? In other words, is Jesus sacrificed multiple times? Or, he asks, is the sacrifice of every Mass a participation in some mysterious way in the sacrifice of Calvary? In other words, Jesus was only sacrificed once and for all at Calvary. Excellent way to frame the question, and the simple short answer is the latter, not the former. So definitely not the former. The Catholic Church does not believe in or claim or in any way suggest that the Mass is another separate sacrifice, unique unto itself. It's not. The Masses are unique, but I'll get to that in a minute. The Mass, rather, is, as you stated in the second part of your question, is in fact the once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. The Epistle to the Hebrews makes this plain repeatedly, that he was sacrificed once for all, once for all, once for all, and that is finished and done with in terms of the actual sacrifice that Jesus made for you and for me on the cross some 2,000 years ago. What happens at Mass, however, is that we are made mystically, really and truly, but mystically in the sense that your senses don't detect it, nor do mine, and this would be something akin to the miracle of transubstantiation, when at the Mass, when the priest says the words of consecration, and what once was bread and what once was a chalice of wine, the contents of which become now the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus under the appearances of bread and wine. So the appearances remain. The external, physically discernible characteristics of the bread and the wine remain, but the reality, the substance of the Lord himself is now present, and the substance or the reality of the bread and the wine are no longer there. And so this is why we talk about Jesus in the Holy Eucharist being truly, sacramentally, substantially present. Those terms have key meanings. And without going into all of the meanings there, just simply to say it means that Jesus is truly present, glorified and resurrected, body, blood, soul, and divinity. So there's no part of Jesus, if we can speak in terms of parts, that is not present under the appearances of bread and wine. That's the dogma of the faith. That's what Jesus taught at the Last Supper, in other words. So back to your question, Eric. When you go to Mass, you are made present by the power of the Lord's grace at the Last Supper, at Calvary, and in the heavenly sanctuary, where, as the book of Revelation describes, the wedding feast of the Lamb, and how Jesus, our high priest, as it says in the Epistle to the Hebrews, is eternally presenting this spotless sacrifice before the Father on our behalf. So his priesthood does not pass away. And one takeaway from that is that the nature of the priesthood is to offer sacrifice. That's the nature of Christ's priesthood, according to the order of Melchizedek, to offer sacrifices. So he is not only the victim, but he's also the priest offering himself as victim to the Father. And since that priesthood doesn't pass away, that sacrifice is eternally present to us. And in this life, we participate in it, we tap into it, you might say, by attending Mass, and that's where these realities simultaneously occur. So not a second or separate sacrifice, but the once-for-all sacrifice of Jesus that we are privileged to be able to see. And in a way similar to how we don't see the change in the Eucharist after the consecration, you don't see yourself at the Last Supper. You can imagine yourself there. That's kind of helpful, I found. Imagine yourself off in a corner as Jesus is taking the bread and saying, "This is my body," etc. Imagine yourself there. I mean, imagining yourself there is not necessary, but it can be helpful in terms of your prayer. Same as imagining yourself standing at the foot of the cross. Maybe you're off in a corner, perhaps, but you're there next to St. John, next to the Blessed Virgin Mary, etc. And imagine yourself being in the heavenly sanctuary where you're seeing this amazing scene that we can't even describe. I can't even put it into words because I don't know how to, because I've never seen it. And even St. Paul, who actually did see into heaven for a brief time, he said when he was writing about it, he said, I can't even describe it. It's indescribable. So, to answer your question, Eric, that's what happens. Now, I mentioned something about the Mass being unique. I'll just return to that briefly. Each Mass is unique insofar as it in itself conveys those infinite merits of Jesus, and it contains the same unique spiritual fruitfulness for all who are prepared to receive it, but it is unique insofar as that it's offered by a particular priest for a particular intention, and there's a unique set of people who happen to be present there, if there are people who are present, that kind of thing. So there is a kind of uniqueness about it, but it doesn't mean that it's a second or separate or different sacrifice. So I hope that's helpful to you, and I appreciate your very interesting and erudite question.
That was the Best of the Week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the Best of the Week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.